Drew, the main question is how do the losses and additions to this new Mavericks team affect them during the season? They're coming off of a almost Cinderella run right to the finals, end up losing to the Celtics there, thankfully. Main addition for this team is definitely going to be Klay Thompson. Main loss for this team is going to be Derrick Jones Jr. They also signed Najee Marshall, brought in Quentin Grimes, Spencer Dinwiddie. Some of those latter guys are just for depth. And then primary ball handling when Kyrie and Luka are off the court for Dinwiddie at least. So with the addition of Thompson, sending away Derrick Jones Jr., how does all that really affect the Mavericks team? Can they make another run, or are they going to fall short?
I think a lot of it depends on what you think of the run they made last year. Like, was that just one of those, the team caught fire at the right place, the right time, and they went crazy? Or was it, you know what, they had it all along. They just had to figure out the pairings they had on offensive defense. And once they put it together, they ran all the way through to the finals. Depending on your mindset on that, an addition like Klay Thompson could put you over the top. Or it's just, you know what, they were Cinderellas at the ball. They're turning back into a pumpkin, and they are not going to have the same success this season. And as you could see, I kind of danced around your question by not quite giving you an answer, because as a basketball fan, I don't know how to judge what the Mavericks did last year. It was very clear that they were severely overmatched in the NBA Finals. They had no chance at winning that series, which we knew all year the Celtics were taking home the trophy. You may not have thought that because you're a nervous fan, but all year the Celtics were the best team and the Mavericks ended up getting, smashed in the finals. So it's hard to judge their season and the run to the playoffs they had, the playoff run they had, because I'm not exactly sure if it was real or not. And I don't know if the Klay Thompson addition moves the needle too much for me in that respect.
Yeah. And the thing is when this gets clipped and if we put it out there for the Mavericks fans to go find, some of our biggest content has come from talking about the Mavericks, and it's not been in the most positive light, specifically talking about Luka, talking about the Mavericks free agency grades, and they have not been big fans of what we have said. Almost like they're like, Dallas fans, Cowboys fans too. On top of that, you get the kind of delusion and craziness that goes along with that. But for me personally, I hate the Klay Thompson signing, not because of Klay, but because of the perspective around Klay and who the Mavericks think they're getting. Maybe not the Mavericks, but the fans and who they think they're getting. This is not 2018, 2019 Klay, where he's this elite level defender, 11th in defensive player of the year voting, or second team all defense. He's not that type of guy anymore. He just posted his lowest steals per game and his worst defensive rating of his entire career. So even if you're not bringing him on for the defensive stuff, which I hope you're not going to, you're looking at Kyrie, not the best elite level defender, Luka, who doesn't really play a lot of defense. He shows flashes, I understand that, but he doesn't really play a whole lot of defense, just for the main fact of he carries the offensive load, right? That's who he is. But when on the offensive side of the ball, Klay just posted his second lowest field goal percentage and lowest 3-point percentage in his entire career when at least playing 60 games in the season. Now, when I say 60 games in the season, Sorry, I was just looking at your chat, Drew. When I say 60 games in the season, I'm just kind of cutting out the 32 games he played and got injured. So I'm a little frustrated with the Mavericks fans thinking that they're bringing in this elite level guy, that they're bringing in Klay Thompson of old. This is not who you're getting. You're getting a guy who's a little bit washed up. He's going to play the wing spot next to Luka and Kyrie, who we know, again, they're not the best defenders in the league. Okay. Luka, again, shows flashes, but he's not the best defender in this league. He doesn't play a lot of defense. It's almost like we're talking about 39-year-old LeBron James. He doesn't play a whole lot of defense anymore because he carries a lot of the offensive load on the other side.
Don't disrespect LeBron, sir.
I'm not going to be disrespecting LeBron.
I will not be having it.
But when we're talking about Klay for the offensive side, the positive here is he's going to be the third option on an offense. And yes, he's going to bring some confidence in the three-point shooting. The efficiency, I don't think, is going to be there as much. Hopefully, he shoots a little bit less because of the other offensive weapons that are there. But I think what he brings the most on the offensive side of the ball is the off-ball screens and the off-ball movement that he's used to with Steph and the Warriors. If they can implement a little bit of that with Luka and Kyrie and get all of them moving around a little bit more open shots for Luka. We know he can make the tough ones. We know he likes to make the tough ones. But getting Klay to get moved around a little bit more would probably be good for this team. And that's, I think, what he mainly brings to the team. It's not high-level three-point shooting anymore. It's not high-level defense. That's not who you're getting. You're getting a guy who can move off the ball, off-ball screens, and get other guys open. That's what we're looking at nowadays. That's why I have a problem with Klay. When you're looking at Derek Jones Jr., how does the loss for that? Good.
I was just going to say, I'm super excited to see the splits about halfway through the offseason. And I think they're going to, halfway through the season, I think they're going to show you, especially the on and off splits. I think they're going to show you that Klay really excels when he's on the court, not the field, when he's on the court with Kyrie, with Luka on the bench, as opposed to when he's on the court with Luka, with Kyrie on the bench. I think you're going to see severe sways in their off and on, their plus minus stats with that. I think that he's really just going to excel with Kyrie with the ball in his hands, and he may not be as I don't want to act like he's still not going to be a threat to shoot, but I just think it's going to look a lot better with Kyrie on the court as opposed to Luka. And realistically for the Mavericks, we're not doing a power rankings or anything tonight, but I imagine if I sat down and did, I would have the Mavericks behind Denver, behind OKC, behind Minnesota, which is probably kind of where they were at last year at this time. So you bring in Klay, and I don't think the expectations have changed much for this team. You're still in the world of contender-ish, but you're not the top flight of the Western Conference. And I think that really does take the pressure off of them as far as expectations go.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. The biggest loss for this team was, again, it was Derek Jones Jr. That should have been probably the biggest offseason priority for them. Derek Jones Jr. ended up signing with the Clippers, which we will talk about a little bit later, actually way later on a 3-year, $30 million contract. I've already kind of brought up what he brings, like defensively. Derek Jones Jr. is a high-level elite perimeter defender. That's who he is. So getting rid of him, bringing in a guy who's not going to play a whole lot of defense or very efficiently is going to hurt them on the perimeter side a little bit. We don't know the Mavericks as this high-level defensive team, and I know they played a lot better defense in the playoffs, but I think the playoff run was closer to the Cinderella stuff, especially with Derek Jones Jr. shooting like 47% from three when he didn't do that in the regular season. PJ Washington shooting high from three. He didn't do that in the regular season. So a lot of these guys exceeding expectations in the most important times. And then all of a sudden their defense got a hell of a lot better in the most important times. I think it's a little bit more Cinderella run, but losing Derek Jones Jr., who was just an elite level piece, sucks. But to combat that a little bit, you bring in Najee Marshall, who is a good defender, who shot the best 3-point percentage of his career last year. So you're kind of just like cloning Derek Jones Jr. and flipping it and giving him a little bit less of a contract, 3 years, $27 million. So a little bit less, but you're bringing a similar type player just in case you have to kind of make up for the Klay Thompson woes. That's how I view losing one guy and bringing in another.
I don't think that you win the NBA finals. I don't think you make deep playoff runs in today's NBA without really, really good wing defense. And in losing him and your addition being Klay, your wing defense goes from what was a plus for your team to now a major. Between Luka, between Klay, the defense is something that concerns me. But again, the expectations really aren't there. I mean, I've looked at a lot of power rankings. I've looked at a lot of projections, and the so-called experts are all over the place with the Dallas Mavericks this year. I think it's just going to be one of those things where if they win 58 games, people will be like, okay, that makes sense. And if they win 45 games, that would be terrible, actually. That would be very terrible. If they win like 50 or 51 games, people would be like, yeah, that makes sense. So Dallas is actually a super interesting team to keep your eye on this year, because Luka, if he can play 70, 74 games this year, if Kyrie can play 70, 74 games this year, that's good. It's going to be huge for them. And I don't know. The Klay thing, like he already played with Steph, one of the greatest shooters of all time, and he was still struggling the later years in his career. I'm not sure if the Luka,
Yep.
oh, he's paired with Luka, that's going to be great. I'm more interested to see him paired with Kyrie personally.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat as you. In the GM survey stuff that we just saw come out in the last week, which we will talk about a little bit later. Not this particular topic, but the Mavericks were one of the top teams that were voted on for hardest to really predict their season. I think you can go plus or minus on their games by 10. I don't know if they're gonna compete for. They're not going to compete for a 1 seed. I think. I think when you're talking about seeds 1 through 3, well, we're talking about the Thunder up there. We're talking about the Nuggets are still going to be competing pretty highly. The Wolves, even with the subtraction of Cat, I think is still going to be competing pretty highly. And then the Mavs are going to be somewhere in the top 4, 5-ish is probably where they're going to be sitting, unless Klay just blows up and then all of a sudden he's the player that I'm saying that he's not anymore. Then we might be talking about them inside that top 3 or 2. But I personally don't see that. Do you see them somewhere inside that top 3 at all in competitiveness for seeding?
I see a lot of people putting them in the top 3.
Yeah.
I have not transitioned to, as I have with the NFL, to NFL fan. I have not transitioned to that.
Mm-hmm.
I am still Kings fan. I'm still
Right.
Kings are top 4 in the West this year. We're going to be legit. We're going to do great. And so I can't I can't get the Kings into the top 4 with leaving the Mavs up there. So I'll fully put it out there. I am super biased homer here when it comes to the NBA stuff. And my heart's going to be broken if the Kings aren't good this year, because I've already bought like 12 sets of tickets. I'm expecting to be at a lot of games and they haven't won a preseason game yet. So I see a lot of people putting the Mavs in the top 3. So we'll see.